Hey everybody, today I want to talk about one of the more confusing aspects of JavaScript, and that is this. This is going to be confusing because sometimes I'm going to say the word this and it's going to refer to a specific thing in JavaScript called this. Other times I'm going to say the word this and it's just part of the English language, the word this. So I'm going to try to keep this tutorial as easy to understand as possible. And I have text in front of me. So in the text, if you see the word this in this kind of yellowish color, it means I'm referring to the JavaScript concept of this. If you see the word this in just the normal white text, then it's just the normal word this in the English language. Okay? So let's jump into it. Hopefully we can keep this straight and the coding examples will make sense. But understanding this is going to be very important to you depending on what you're doing in JavaScript, but especially if you're dealing with the document object model, which much of JavaScript deals with, then this is an important concept. Okay, so basically this refers to the object that the current function is being called on. Right, so here's an example. If we have an object of person and it has a name and it has a say hello function, and we're using just vanilla function syntax, we're going to console log when this function is called, hello, my name is this.name. Now, when we actually say person.sayhello, meaning we're calling that function, okay, which in this case would be a method on this object, it's going to output, hello, my name is John, because we've assigned name to John. That makes sense, right? This dot name should refer to this object and the value of name. But it doesn't always work like that. So in this next case, let's take it to kind of another level here. Let's say we're referring to an element in the DOM, the document object model, which is basically like what the browser constructs that represents a web page. So we have a button. The ID of the button is my button, so we can refer to this ID. So we save it to a variable, right? So document.getElementById by ID is the way in JavaScript that we can get any element on the page based on its ID. So we're getting it my button. So now this element in your browser on your web page is now saved to button. So we can say button.addEventListener, click. So now we're waiting for a click to happen on the web page. When that click happens, we're providing this callback function that's going to console log the phrase you clicked on the button with text, and it's going to say this.innerHTML. So innerHTML gives us whatever is inside of this button. In this case, it should be click me. Okay, so when this button on your page gets clicked, it will call this function and it will refer to this, which in this case is the button. All right, and we should get the words click me. Okay, and that's what we will get. Let's go back to our first example though and see how this doesn't always work out the way we think it's going to work out. So same object, all right, person, name John, same hello function. We're going to do this.name. But now we're saving greetings as person.sayhello. Our output now for this.name becomes undefined. Why is it undefined? It seems like it should work. Well, in this case, because we're saving something to greetings here, we're saving a new constant, the this actually is referring to the global object, right? Which if we're in the browser, which we're assuming we're in the browser, it's going to be the window object. The window object doesn't have a name. So it's giving us undefined because window.name is undefined in this case. We thought we were saying person.name, but in reality, we're just saying window.name. Okay. Now we can fix this, and this is why arrow functions are important. Okay, so there's two ways we can do this. The old method of doing this was to bind this method. So we could say greetings now equals person.sayhello.bind person. So we're telling it, hey, we are referring to the object person here. We want to use that as the this. Okay? In this case, we'll actually get, hello, my name is John, referencing the correct name in the person object. Okay, but we don't really need to do that anymore. We have this newer arrow function syntax. So an arrow function, which I went over in a previous video, doesn't have its own this value. It just inherits the this value of whatever the scope is. So in this case, the say hello function is defined as an arrow function, right? So it doesn't have its own this. It just inherits the this from its context. Well, what's the context here? The context is this object. So no matter how we call this function, it's always going to use the surrounding context, in this case, the person object, as the this. Well, the person object has a dot name, right? It has name, so it's always going to be John. So we can say greetings equals person dot say hello. And so if we call greetings, we're always going to get the name John. Okay. So a little bit complicated to understand. Arrow functions make it easier. So I recommend using arrow functions whenever possible to reduce the amount of confusion about what this is going to do, right? Because honestly, if you were to make an object like this, common sense would say it should output the name that you put here, in this case, John. Okay, so you almost always want it to behave in that way. So just use an arrow function, you should be fine. If for some reason you're in a situation where you either didn't use an arrow function or couldn't use an arrow function, let's say you don't have control over this code you're calling, then you can achieve the same effect by binding the object that you want. Okay. So be aware of that. This is a little confusing. If you end up messing around with your code and you find you're getting undefined when you didn't mean to get undefined, then it may be a problem with your use of this. So to troubleshoot, check to see if you're using arrow functions, check to make sure if you're binding properly, and you should be all right with this. This concept is kind of tricky, so let me know if you have any questions about this down in the comments. I would be happy to answer your questions, or if you have like specific code snippets, you're like, why doesn't this work in this case? I'll help you out. Have a great day. Hopefully you understood, and happy to help. See you later.